Hi guys, if you want to learn how to sketch by understanding what you're looking at and focusing on a few key features rather than breaking it down into shapes, then you're in the right place. And today I would like us to work on this rose-breasted grosbeak. So what you need is your scrap piece of paper and any pen that you like, and I'm going to use this black one today. It doesn't really drop a lot of ink. I can sort of like control the amount of ink that it drops so that I can focus on some shading and whatnot. But just while you're getting yourself organized, what the objective is today with this sketch, I printed it off Shutterstock. It's a photograph by Lasenby, and all these lines through it are courtesy of my printer. But see how the bird is leaning toward us, and we have quite a bit of shading under his tummy and whatnot. There's shading with the tail that's like at the back. We see some of the shoulder here. This is the under part of the wing. This right here is shadow, so we can decide later whether or not we want to include that. But it's a very cool pose, and I think if we execute this well, we should end up with a sketch where he is kind of like leaning out of the page toward us, and his body is going into the background. So if you're set up now and you've got your scrap piece of paper and you're ready to go, how about, oh yeah, so your starting point on the page, see how he's kind of like, he's not like one way or the other. So I think, if you allow yourself kind of like an up and down space on your page, you should be pretty safe. And I'm using this little tripod on my desk, which I'm really hoping I don't hit while we do this. Anyway, enough about me. Let's start right at the top of the bill and see. So it's a very thick bill, like a finch, and we don't have much of a curve up in his forehead. See that? So let's make sure that this angle is really kind of like flattened, and this is like his forehead, and it goes right to the top of his head and then curves around to the back of his head, and then it drops down for the neck area. Okay, now see this distance here? We want to make sure that we've got a fair amount of distance in our spacing here, so that when we start these little feathers on the throat, we allow for a nice fat bill. And the top of the forehead and these feathers under the chin, they kind of line up. So let's just pay attention to that, and then take this angle back for his throat, and see how this part of the throat, it comes down this way like this, and the angle of the photograph is capturing his back right here. So this is his back and this is the front part of his throat, and this angle here and here gives us a good sort of orientation for his head. Okay, so let's just curve this a little bit for his shoulder. We've got some of the wing here. These are wing feathers here away from the body. Now, see how skinny this looks? It's already there's stuff for me to fix. Well, okay, let's not get carried away with our complaining. And we'll put in the curve for his back. And this is his wing. And we can just take this in a little bit here. Because what we want to do is make sure, actually this isn't too bad, this angle right here. Let's go up and put in his bill. So whatever you do, just see how it really kind of like follows the forehead and curves down. So try to just carry that line down and out. And then this is just very typical. I think it shouldn't be that far down. Take this in here and then bottom part. Let's just kind of finish off the bill. Oh, jeepers creepers. The curvature around the face and the nostril. And what I am going to have to do is just be careful of the tripod and focus more on turning my paper when I have to. But how about we just get this bill done so we kind of have a better idea, the sizing for the head and whatnot. Okay, I'll fix all that later. Let's get the eye in. Did you put in his nostril? And see how, pay attention to this distance here, because we want to make sure that the eye is sort of, primarily aligned with the top part of the bill. And if we can sort of like figure out these features and see how circular it is with this border of tissue around it. And let's, there's the light being reflected off the curvature of the eye right there. So let's just leave that and shade in the rest of it. And what we're going to do is just when we do the coloring on the head, we're going to keep our pen away from the perimeter of the eyeball so that we can have this coloration of the tissue around the eyeball. And okay, I've sort of put this eye too far back, so I'm going to have to make it a little bit larger. Sorry, that piece of paper was bugging me. Bring this forward a little bit. And work on having the tissue perimeter. The eye, maybe. On. I don't want to be so fussy with details right now when we just started. Nice flat head. Let's take this back a little bit more. And you know what? If you're like me and you want to change any of your angles right now, perfect. Might as well, right? Let's take this down. This is part of his chest. And then we've got the curvature straight into his tummy. And when we look at how far out we go with the body, it's not too bad like this. I think that he should look fatter in my sketch. Now his tummy comes down. We're going to shade his tummy, and then we've got this leg fairly well defined. I don't know if you've seen a red-breasted grosbeak, but they are kind of a larger, heavy bird. They're not like a cute little warbler or anything like that. These guys are solid guys. Feet today. We're not getting off easy like we did with the hummingbird. Put in some bumps for the tissue on like the wrist. I'm sure that's not the technical term. And then we have kind of the dip, the foot, and then this is the knuckle for the one toe, and then this one, the middle toe, is always the longest one. So see this in the photograph? It goes here, here, and this is the middle toe, and then we've got the shorter third toe here. So we've got a little bit of a knuckle, and then thick, and then the claw. Then we've got shadow that defines the outline. I know it's really hard to see, but this dark part right here is the claw of this toe. So let's just take this down. A big, thick middle toe. And then the third one is kind of ending here. Okay, and then we've got quite a bit of tummy, and then here, it's a small section of leg. And this is the back toe that we can see quite clearly, blurry but clearly. Let's do the tissue around the wrist, some bumps for the top of the foot. Come forward to do this mess of toes. And this long middle toe is curving around the branch. Not just because the logo for Shutterstock is in the way. All that too. And let's connect this up. We want to make sure that the branch is going through part of his foot that makes sense. Keep the branch away from his wing up here. Okay, we've got the bottom of the wing, this is his leg. Now we've got the bum feathers. I could go back here. They start pretty close to the nice deep V. really should learn the technical term. Because in all my videos I talk about the bum, the bum feathers. Well, consistent language, right? And then we've got the tail that is quite defined. And a good size. And let's just maybe... We're not going to commit to the length of the tail, but how about you just put in some of those black borders so that we can stay, you know, almost like oriented with where we are. Now we've got to figure out how we're going to do his tail here. Okay, where to? How about we put in some of his markings and just work on a bit of these black borders. And then, so if we take this and just see how he's got this collar, and we want to kind of try to pay attention to how this collar comes down. The bottom of his head. And then we've got his black back. And the black on the wing with a bit of the white patches. And this is all wing that we want to make sure we get the shading correct. Around here with a little bit of white and black. Okay. Now, how about we also put in the border for this rose shaded patch on the chest. I always feel like they should be called red-breasted grosbeak, not rose-breasted, because this coloring on the chest is so vibrant. It's in the shrubs. It's this brilliant red that you see. Okay, let's do maybe a little bit of shading under his tummy. There's going to be lots of shading today, as you can tell. And a lot of fixing. But that's just par for the course. So now what I think we should do is, with your pen, whatever shade you're using, I'd like you to start adding a little bit more pressure and just kind of get a little bit more definition where you know you've got to get the black in, or the gray or whatever. And now it's just a case of going around the sketch multiple times and doing all the fixing that we want to do. so that he actually looks like a bird. Because he's not looking much like a bird right now. And while you're doing that, if there's places where you want to fix angles, make them a little bit thicker in places. Or trim them down if that's what's needed. I'll just leave you to it. And without trying to cover up too much of the reference photo, I want to start just trying to fix them up. Now, when you add the shading for the head, just go really light at first, all right? Because what we want to do is just get down a little bit of color, and then we're going to go back over and add some depth where there's a lot more density in the feathers right now, so the light, or in different places, and that density is showing like the depth and whatnot, and we want to make sure that everything's not all the same shade so that we can do the highlights where the feathers are flat and the light has reflected off the surface, or where there's curvature in the face around the cheek, and those feathers are, because the surface isn't flat, they're not reflecting the light, and we want to make that quite a bit darker where we can. So just when you're getting down the initial shading, I want you just going light with your pen. Because we're going to end up making this nice and dark for his head so that he looks closer to the way he's supposed to look. And keep your pen away from the perimeter of the eye. We can always do those details later. Okay. So when we get into this black collar, where it blends in with the colorful chest, just try to have more of an uneven line. You can see where some of the black of the feathers are overlapping the reddish ones. So I'll just try to get some light, because we want to try to get some definition in the chest as well. This lighter patch is due to the curvature of the chest. So the sunlight is catching that part, and then these feathers here are darker because they're showing like the curve of his chest down into his tummy. And we're going to color all this white too. Okay, let's, can you start taking patches of dark and add this to your sketch? Okay, so this is the flattish part of his face. because it's like curving away from his forehead, and then we're getting this nice dark feathers around his the side of his face, a little bit through his head. It doesn't have to be exact, as long as you can figure out roughly where in your own sketch you want to sort of add a deeper tone of the black. And see how this is quite dark close to the eye? Try not to screw that up. And then it goes a little bit lighter, and then there's a darker patch behind it. And if that's too much detail and too fussy or whatever, because you've ended up doing a small sketch, then don't worry about it. The main thing is you just want to have some definition in certain areas of the head, which are, it's going to be enough to sort of show like contour differences, the way the light is coming off the feathers in different ways. Basically, anything you do is going to be fabulous, so it's already fabulous because you're here and you're practicing your art. It's good for our brains. This here is pretty dense compared to the rest of the feathers. So just try to put a little bit of that in. And you know what, maybe to be safe with your shading, don't take this collar down too far, because if it's better to maybe have do a little bit at first and then have a look to see if it needs to be taken down further. But you don't want to like get too carried away into the chest. See how broken up the shading is underneath his throat. And then it's nice and dark at his back here. And I don't know if this should be up higher. I might, because I really like his angle. It's just nice reach. I kind of want it to show that. And we can just sort of make a broken line here to show these white tips. I don't know, I don't want to get in too much trouble messing around with his wing over here just yet, until I figure out how happy I want to be with the head and the chest. Okay, so if we just sort of like break up this collar, and then try to carefully shade in the chest. How about we just leave the top part like as light as we can, and then for definition just add these shadows and stuff through the chest. And see how the red patch runs almost the whole length of his tummy. Okay, that's not too bad. Let's shade in this. You know, can you just define this under part of his wing from the edge of his body? Because these feathers here are going to be behind the seam on this side, but underneath this white part here. Okay, so now what we need to do is add the shadow under his tummy. And see this angle here? Mine, I don't really like. I should have brought it up a little bit sharper. There's nothing I can do to fix it. But let's just shade in some of this white. Let's make his leg a little bit. What am I doing here? What am I doing? Okay, let's shade underneath his tummy for starters. And this curvature by his leg. This is all white. Don't really know if I want to do too much with that. And then with this part here, this angle could be a little bit better. And then with his tail, it's really quite wide and flared. And depending on how you've sort of positioned your branch, I think you either can or cannot see the bottoms of the tail feathers. If we were clever, we'd make this branch really wide so we wouldn't have to make those decisions. Oh, but that's not learning anything, and I don't want to take the easy route. Now remember, like a really long time ago when I was starting out and I said that you get, with every sketch, you kind of get to the point where you know, what you've done is just so different from the reference photo that you've got to kind of just work with what you've got and make it make sense. Well, I think I've reached that point, and you might as well, you might have also. So, whatever you've done, what I'd like you to do is just look at the reference photo and understand sort of like the way the bird is sort of like put together with this pose, and then take that understanding and then just fix the sketch that you've got. Okay? Because seriously, that's what I got to do right now. And where it's dark in the reference photo, I'd like you to really bump up that, increase the darkness in your own sketch. I want his leg to be bigger. See how thick it is? Because, like, as I say, these are like solid birdies. Kind of like, not as slender as a blue jay, but, you know, we're not talking like tiny little wimpy. I bet I want to shut up. I want to shut up and fix all this in here. Excuse me while I just try to figure out what I want to do for the top part of his leg. And I want to just show more curvature of his body here. Okay, what was I nattering on about? Well, I don't think that's really fixed either. I just want to be a little bit more careful with how I'm doing my shading, because this actually might not turn into too bad a sketch if I can just like focus and stop nattering on. Oh yeah, okay. So look at your own sketch and see what you've done, and then just fix it in a way that you know makes sense. Put the shading where it needs to be shaded. Increase the depth of the black where it's appropriate. Oh, do you like the angle that you've done? It's this black kind of goes right to the edge. I'm being too cautious. This is just a small patch of white. And then I want to have it a little bit broken to show where the tips of those white feathers are coming through, and then increase the shading on his back if you can, to try to get definition between the back and the throat. Okay. Now with the feathers under the bill, these should be a bit darker. Not all of them. A little bit of streaking going on. We're just going to go back over and increase the black in some areas. So that he's got some depth to him. And see how nice and dark this is at the back of his neck, where it goes into his shoulder. A little bit of a highlight. And there's actually some red underneath on that wing tip there. But on the back of the head, just make sure that's nice and shaded. See, it's a lot safer just to put down kind of a layer that's not too dark at the outset. Because, oh, sorry if my paper is covering the reference photo and you're working somewhere else and not on the head, but if you go too dark at the beginning, then you're kind of in trouble, because then you've set that value as one of your, possibly one of your lighter shades. So then how do you go darker than that, you know? I mean, that's always the safest way to go with any of your artwork. See how his eyebrow is a little bit darker? Let's get that in. Still leave that slight border around his eye. Not as big as what I've done. I'm going to take mine in a little bit. It's not like he's wearing glasses. Just, and then do this little bit, if you can, and if it's appropriate for your sketch, carry a little bit of that on the other side of the eye, and then just continue on with this little bit of this little wedge of darker color through there too. And you know, like, so like you might think that I'm being super fussy, but you know, like the purpose of doing all this is to help our brains understand what we're looking at and make our hand do, you know, what we want it to do. So if we end up with a good sketch as well, like, so much the better. But honestly, this is really about helping us stay sharp and yeah, it might seem fussy dicking around with these little patches that are dark and light and blah blah blah, but it's just information that we're trying to get our brain to understand and translate to our hand. I mean, you're already reading your books and doing everything else, right? And exercising and stuff. How can we, what do you want to, how does the collar look on your sketch? Do you need to make it more jagged? Because I feel like some of this can be, I don't want to get too dark. And then use the side of your pen and just do some light shading here, and we can just add like a little itty bitty bit of definition. Oh, you know what? I don't think I've taken this down far enough, because this really is a bib. It's very, very much a defined patch on the chest. And in my sketch, I don't feel I got it over far enough on this side. And the positioning of this patch is really going to help, you know, show how the bird is sort of like facing us. Is it nice coloring in this orangey red with your black pen? It looks the same as his head. Imagination required. So there. And then this patch here is actually a little bit denser than what I've done. I mean, every rose-breasted grosbeak is going to have like slightly different markings on their chest, right? So I mean, you don't have to be too precise about how you've done it, but I think I don't want to take mine out. See how there's distance there. And if I take it too far, it kind of shows that he's not really turned toward us. So I took this over too far. I should have backed it up and have this out a little bit more, but I don't want to mess around with it. I'm really looking forward to scribbling on the branch. Okay, and then just take a second to kind of like make his collar look somewhat blended in to his chest. Oh, and there is quite a bit of shading at the tip of the bill. How do I want to do this? I don't want to have his pink bill shaded in too much. Okay, well, this is a hot mess. His forehead isn't that pale. I don't want him looking like he's got paint on his head. Okay, there is a little bit of shading and shadow under there. Let's have this nice and dark. See how nice and dark that is, where the feathers bump up to the bill? Just have a little bit of definition. And for my sketch, I think I've got the eye back too far, so I don't want to have this. I don't want to move the bill forward, right? Because I'm kind of stuck with where I've got the eye. Let's tone some of this down a little bit. Okay, let's just get a little bit of contour to the branch, have it darker underneath, darker where it's under the bird. I feel like saying, don't do this in your own artwork because you're, you know, pay as much attention to all elements of your piece, right? What's the expression? Do as I say, not as I do. Well, actually, like, okay, I have to be fair to myself. I don't do this. I don't do shortcuts and stuff like that for my own artwork. I do the best I can on all elements of it. So there. Let's fix his feet. Definitely need fixing. A little darker little legs and just a little bit, even if it's just shading that you need to add to show that they're in shadow underneath his body. And if you have to make the toes, I kind of feel like you can never go wrong by making the toes big and you know, sturdy. Because you think how much they've got to hold all that weight in a windstorm and everything else. And just, you know, a little bit of shading is a good idea. Darken the claws. Oh, this one I totally forgot to shade in. And then this claw here. And there's a little bit of that back toe that you can see. Okay. I made a mistake with this line being too heavy here. I have to pull that out so that it's more like shadow. Gosh, one little line on his toe is what I'm worried about. That's silly. There's plenty of other stuff to be worried about in the sketch. Oh, did you finish his tail? It's nice and blurry in the reference photo, so I think if you can just put in a little bit of shading and a few dark lines to define the borders of those dark tail feathers, you should be okay. Oh, golly. I kind of feel like saying, if this was a phone call, you can hang up now. You know, it's just, like, he's not bad, okay, but I don't like the bill. I really don't like what I've done here with the bill, so I'm just gonna, like, pull that in a little bit. And his eye is too far back. But you know, like, once I say I'm done, then he's got to be the thumbnail for the video, right? So if I want to make him, I don't cheat by, like, saying, oh, okay, thanks for your company, and then work on him for another 20 minutes after you guys go. That's not right. That's not fair. But you know, like, he's not too bad. Are there any angles that you want to change on your own sketch? See, I just want to give him a little bit more of a forehead here. A little bit more of the forehead. And then he's flatter here, and then curved, and then this comes down. So, you know, just very, very slight changes in the angles can have a significant difference in how he, the orientation and stuff. Is the eyeball nice and dark? Okay. So, if you guys are keeping me company, then that means that this sketch is not too advanced for you. But you know, as we continue on with this, clearly I'm wanting to do more detail, focus on more interesting poses, and you know, develop our skills and stuff. But have a look at earlier videos if you just want to do something that's kind of like less demanding. Because, God, I mean, if I can learn how to do this kind of sketching, anybody can. I was just in tears trying to figure out how to sketch because I couldn't do anything. So, you know, you and I have come a long way. If we can do something that kind of doesn't look too bad. But as I say, if any of this stuff is a little bit too advanced, check out my earlier videos, because they're not much more than like line sketches. Okay, Rose-breasted Grosbeak. I think he's kind of done. Okay. Thank you so much for your company. I'll see you next time.